Yeah, okay.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Barney from Ontario, Canada. And we have we have Peter Jeffs. I was just about to call you doctor, but maybe you're working on your doctorate or something.
No, I got my doctorate in the 90s, so you can call me doctor.
Okay, there you go. We have two extremes here. We have Canadian with pretty much no hair, and we have a Briton man all the way from over the pond and has lots of hair. So welcome, Peter. I'd like to say thank you for being here live today, and everybody else who's with us live. And if you're not, because you're wondering what the heck happened and where we were, this is now the third call in a row that there's been something different that has happened with the technology of this platform. Over 220 calls. I've had probably about 5 or 6 of them that I've done with BeLive TV, but in the last 3, they've been consistent. So anyways, you guys didn't come here to learn about the technology challenges that we are experiencing, but just to let you know why we're starting a little bit late. But first and foremost, I just want to welcome you to today's call, because last time we had Peter Jeffs on, it was very interesting. We learned a lot of very interesting concepts and techniques. And you know, the last few calls we've been talking about, I feel like a little bit more about cats and dogs, and today's going to be a big focus on horses. But I think that a lot of your work does apply to other animals as well, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, so let's play the little game of maybe people don't know who you are. So could you just give us a brief little kind of synopsis overview about your background, your history, and what you're doing right now, and then let's get into the teaching.
Sure. So I was trained in the life sciences way back in the 80s and 90s, and I was imagining I would have a scientific career, but life's so different. And it took me some time, but I eventually found my way through to studying Reiki, and then a little bit later to studying systematic kinesiology. And what I found really interesting about these approaches was that it really rejoined the kind of intuition, deep intuition that I had in my 20s when I was studying for my, taking my graduate studies. Intuition about how things are wired up and how things are interconnected. I found it actually quite difficult to be in the scientific establishment, and that's why I left science in the end, because that sort of holistic feeling was very, very strong in me. And my life has just evolved, the next sort of 20 years to bring me back to how things are joined up. And so the work I do today, I have a real love of horses, and again, I've been guided into that. It wasn't ever something that I imagined I'd find myself doing, but I totally love this. And so while I trained, obviously many Reiki practitioners work with animals. Kinesiology, it's more usual to work with humans, and I trained as a human kinesiologist, but I just wanted to apply everything I knew to help horses. And that's what I'm doing today. Little by little, there are openings coming up, and I'm just following that. It's very experimental. I'm developing this stuff myself. There are a few equine kinesiologists around the world. Had the pleasure to meet 1 or 2 through Animal Wellness Summit, which is fantastic. But we're not actually that common. So, I'm doing a lot of this work myself, and doing what I can to bring help and healing to the horses that I'm really blessed to work with. So that's where I am today.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I just think that the biggest thing that I mean, there's a lot of things that you said that I found was interesting. One of the things that you just said, and I also remembered from the last time that we talked, was that a lot of what you're learning now and kind of proving or seeing being demonstrated to you through your work are things that you had intuitions about, or like an inner knowing early on in your life, but then you didn't know how to explain it. And you know, that's kind of interesting that now your life's work is kind of unfolding some of that, right?
Absolutely. I think particularly with kinesiology, because whereas Reiki works on an energy level, I would say, you know, and there's a certain amount of unseen with Reiki, but with kinesiology, we really visualize how the body responds through the muscle test. And I think this was the thing that blew me away when I first started my training. I, you know, having been trained classically as a biologist and within, you know, the whole paradigm of, you know, the molecular biology and genes and all this kind of, you know, and the physiology, I just realized when I started my training that it's, you know, the body is just such an incredible receptor. It's such an incredible receptor. And we, you know, in kinesiology, I mean, I'm, you know, certainly learning more and more. I mean, you just use my body as an instrument to be able to tune in, tap into an energy field, and the body is that subtle. And I think, you know, when I think back now to when I was studying at graduate school, I mean, you know, if I'd said any of this stuff, I mean, people would have just thought I was completely crazy. And I didn't really know where to turn because I had these intuitions, and I tried to sort of, you know, take the subjects that I was working on. But I mean, it just didn't fit, and it still, in many ways, doesn't fit. It fits more with the kind of high energy physics approach. I mean, physicists are really getting into some very far out stuff, and they are coming around to the fact that things are, you know, incredibly intricately connected. You know, my first kinesiology testing, I mean, I just could not believe it. I really couldn't. And it always amazes me when I see things, muscles switching on and off. I mean, how you can do this stuff. And what I'm going to be talking about next week is another level. It's another layer. And of course, it's you know, this is very, very tuned into the traditional Chinese medicine, as I will be sharing with you. So, you know, it's like we're really getting into something very, very fine, very subtle, and very beautiful.
Yeah, that's good. That is interesting. And the kinesiology side is something that definitely interests me. And I think that a lot of people, I'm making a total presumption here, but that there are different levels of understanding in regards to kinesiology. And I'm just going to be presumptuous, and let's just say that somebody out there is watching this live or a replay that has no idea what kinesiology actually means or what it is. Because there was a time that I did, and I started a gym, and I was familiar with kinesiology, but I had a grade 12 education, but I had a deep passion, and still do, deep burning passion, or inspired kind of learning. I'm a student of life. I like learning. And so I just always kind of let my intuition kind of guide me as to whatever I was interested in learning. But can you just briefly describe what is kinesiology and how you understand it anyways?
Yes. Well, I mean, you know, it arrived in the 60s, you know, through osteopaths and chiropractors in the States who were working, realizing that muscles were switched on and off by a variety of different things. So it comes out of that background, and there are many osteopaths and chiropractors who use kinesiology in their work. It's commonly known. I mean, there is a kind of kinesiology which is known through, you know, it's the sort of the science of the movement of muscles, and that comes very much. That's what people know in the sporting or the gym context. But systematic kinesiology is slightly different, in the sense that we're using muscles, the way in which they switch on and off, to be able to ask the body how it feels about things. How it expresses itself. So the basic premise is that muscle is linked to a meridian in the Chinese traditional medicine and to an organ. So, for example, shoulder muscle, take an example, the pectoralis major clavicular, which is a muscle that we have in our shoulder. When, you know, this muscle tests strong, so it's a movement, basically, if you put your arm out and then you move your hand, if you move your arm down about a sort of 45 degrees away from your body, so down and out, when you make that movement, you're activating this muscle, the PMC, and that's linked to the stomach as an organ, and it's linked to the stomach meridian. And the premise that we work on is that you know, our role is to help the body balance those three things: the muscle, the meridian, and the organ. And something that, for example, is let's say perturbing the stomach. You know, a good example is having low stomach acid, so you have digestive problems because you're not making enough stomach acid. You know, that's something that in certain people will, when you test this muscle, will switch the muscle off. So you ask the person, you know, I'll move back a little bit so that you've got a little bit more. Okay, so there's my arm, and I would use a couple of fingers, and I would just, with my client, I would just gently ask them to meet my pressure. And normally, when the system is balanced, when the circuit is balanced, they will meet that pressure without any problem. Now, when you've got some kind of imbalance, let's say in the stomach circuit, you'll ask someone to test that muscle, and they will not be able to meet your pressure. And they will look at you and they will say, "That's funny. I just can't, I can't hold that," you know? And that's where the body is speaking. We use 40 different muscles, and there are many reasons for that. First of all, different muscles related to different meridians, and sometimes you can't use a particular muscle because if somebody's in pain, let's say, you know, physically in pain on a particular muscle, then you're not going to work with that. So we have alternatives. And that's why it's important that the kinesiologist has a, you know, has a broad understanding of the you know, the different muscles and how they relate to these meridians. But, you know, there are a set of muscles for each meridian, and we can use those muscles to ask the body, how is this circuit behaving? And that's, you know, I mean, that for me is the kind of, you know, the essence. Now, when you know, that's the first thing. Let's say there's some kind of imbalance and the body speaks, so you're testing these muscles and this muscle is going weak, you know, and you say, well, you know, so let's see what is going to strengthen that muscle. That's the question. We're not asking the person, you know, well, what did you have for lunch? Or, you know, do you do this? I mean, we don't need to go into the mental. We don't need to ask. And we could just look and say, okay, well, look, let's have a look at, you know, stomach acid. Let's see something like, you know, betaine hydrochloride is a common supplement for stimulating stomach acidity. So you can take a, you know, a supplement and you just place it on the body, and you know, if it's relevant, you know, the person will, you test the muscle, and the person's arm will be absolutely rock solid, and they'll say, well, hang on a minute, what did you do? And you say, well, actually, I mean, you know, I just brought some betaine HCl and I just put it on your tummy, you know, and there's all these little, you know, just, you know, they're just little, you know, supplements, and they say, yeah, my arm feels completely different. And what's happening is that the body is reacting to that and saying, yeah, oh wow, this is nice, I can, you know, I can actually use some of this. And it could be betaine HCl, or it could be, you know, it could be vitamin B, something like that. Or it could be emotional. And, you know, we've got ways of testing. So you can go in and you can test, and you could say, well, you know, is this going to speak, you know, what is this? No, nutrition is not coming through. Nutrition is not coming through. Let's ask about emotions. So this is, our person now is, this muscle is weak, and, and say, look, well, so is there an emotional issue? And just by saying that, you can find, you find sometimes that the muscle will just strengthen. So you say, okay, well, let's look at that. And so you can then say, right, well, look, is there something bothering you? Yeah, I've got my driving test in 3 weeks. I've failed it 15 times. I'm absolutely, So you can test that. Okay, well, look, how about driving test? Yeah, okay, we'll lock that into the body and we'll test that. And that might come up relevant. So suddenly, you say, so what is it about your driving test? Well, last time I failed, my partner, just told me I was just the biggest loser. And so suddenly, you're opening up into something like, the whole emotional story. And so the person can then go through, well, so what is it that the partner said? And why is this? And why is there a loser? And what's actually losing? And where is this coming from? And you can, in that, the body is just taking you on a journey between the practitioner and the client, taking you on a journey. And when the person realizes that, this might be an emotional thing, then they have some work to do. Because obviously it's not good if you're in a relationship and, when something comes up, you just get completely humiliated. So, there's a thing. And if the person can then, as a practitioner, we're supporting them in this process. And when they get to the end of that and actually say, well, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm going to do my best. And I'm going to get my partner to understand that I did my best and that maybe I'm not a great driver, but, it's going to be fine. And at that point, the stomach the stomach heals. The stomach can heal because the issue of of that humiliation, of that being scared of what this other person was maybe going to say, they've confronted it. And this is, again, this is, we've talked a little bit about the kind of the biomedical, where it's, maybe something to do with stomach acid and it's maybe to do with vitamin B, but it could be an emotional thing, which is just as important. And this is what just completely blows me away with kinesiology. When I discovered this, people working with this, I just thought, oh my God, this is just amazing. And it really, it's something that I really do. I just have an immense respect for my teachers and for the people who shared this work, because I do think it is fantastic. And what I would, what I would say, this is one of the things that then I discovered with the horses, bring us back to our subject, is that, when, let's say we're, been working with our person with this sort of, with this issue of fear of, being humiliated or being talked down because of something that they're afraid of. But the work takes me in this exactly the same way with the horse. And this is something that I'm going to be addressing in the mini masterclass, when we're going to be talking about the 5 elements. Well, the 5 elements, the key to traditional Chinese medicine, and the 5 elements are absolutely central in kinesiology. When we're dealing with an emotional issue, we could be dealing with many different things, but if we're dealing with an emotional issue, let's say that's becoming a kind of active factor, then, the whole process of talking with the horse is, it works in exactly the same way. And one of the lovely sort of discoveries that I found is that actually my human training in kinesiology is absolutely as apt working with animals. It's not, I'm not in any sense an animal communicator, in a way that I know there are many very gifted people who have very, very deep channeled communications with animals. When I'm working with, the doing the meridian work, we just talk it through. And the horses have shown me that they, completely understand this. And when we reach the point the practitioner, you can work just with speech, with saying, and you, I mean, I have the same, you know, the same results, the same things show up. So there's this sort of fantastic way in which, you know, one can go through this kind of work, whether it's to do with, you know, diet or nutrition or, you know, something like that. And when it goes to an emotional issue, working in exactly the same way. And that is, for me, again, I mean, it's just another one of these really beautiful things. So I mean, I've discovered this myself, and a lot of people have, you know, studied the, you know, the kinesiology, you know, for many, many years, and they know all this. I mean, I've certainly, this has been revealed to me, so I'm, you know, I'm very, very sensitive to that, but I'm absolutely amazed by the way in which, you know, the subtlety of our communication. And so, I mean, I'm, you know, I use my, you know, the tools that I was given through my diploma in kinesiology as I can to address, you know, what comes up with the horses that I'm able to work with. And it's, again, it's an amazing adventure. So I'm going to share some of this, you know, next week in the mini masterclass, which is about the 5 elements.
Yeah, that I was just going to acknowledge that. So for those of you wondering what Peter is referring to, we may, I'm going to presume most of you know this, but some of you don't. So we have these live weekly coaching calls where we do every week, almost every week when we don't have technology challenges. And then we also have started doing, based on requests from our paid members, our VIP and platinum members, to do a monthly mini masterclass. So that's a very focused training that's on a specific topic. And so Peter is going to be our 6th presenter. We've had 5 previous ones, and I will put the link down here below where you can. So if you're a VIP or platinum member, then you get this included, and you probably already know this. It's in your membership. You can just attend it, or you can watch the replay. But if you're not, and you're like, wow, this Peter guy really knows his stuff, and it's very interesting, because we're usually on our live weekly coaching have the ability to just kind of like scratch in on the surface. And he's going to go a little bit deeper, and there's approximately a 60-minute teaching period and then a 30-minute Q&A. So if you have questions, I mean, you can ask them now, of course, but if you have questions specifically about the 5 elements and your horse to understand more, then you can ask your questions on that monthly mini masterclass. And it's just for $27, and then you get the video, the audio, and the transcript. So I just wanted to put that out there to let you know that you can participate on that, even if you're not a one of our regular paying or VIP members. And then it's kind of cool, because then you can just pick whichever one that is of interest to you. So that's pretty cool. I was thinking that as you were talking and taking some notes and listening, you know, because you were really explaining about that with the emotions, about just the effect of the expression of the responses in the muscular system, in the nervous system, as a result of the changes internally in our body, whether that be emotionally or nutritionally, or the perception of, you know, X source of stress, and then how we can, you know, how much our emotions can change that. And I know that you kind of briefly touched on that with how that relates to the horses, and even just other animals, but can you give us a little bit of a practical example of like a little test or something that we could do to be kind of, you know, when we're playing with our dog or our cat or our horse, and something comes to us, but we're not really sure how to do it. Like, can you give us a little bit of guidance there? Because I feel like a lot of people are familiar and aware with what you're talking about, but then there's the application side of like, okay, let's try something this week, utilizing all that you're teaching us. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, well, what I'm going to do next week is to give some practical tips. Obviously, the detailed work with kinesiology and EFT is itself a training, so there's not, in that sense, not something that I can transmit in that way. What I can do is, and what I'm going to do is to give an idea, description of what these 5 elements are, and keys to being able to recognize which might be relevant in terms of a given situation with your animal. So if you like, I'm going to present a table with some very clear indicators. And, you know, if we're talking about a behavior, for example, and this is something that I will be giving a detailed example of in the talk, you know, if we've got, you know, response of fear and shock, for example, we see that our animal is very, very shocked, then that speaks of a particular element. And that's the kind of thing that one can then start to work with. What I'm going to do is take you through this process of recognition, like seeing what's going on and making, you know, a very simple assessment, and then recognizing ways in which one can work with that, which element seems to be implicated in you know, in this, you know, in what is happening, what is going on with my animal, and then, you know, what I can actually practically do about it. And one of the simplest approaches is, again, through tapping, through, you know, the emotional freedom therapy, if it's an emotional issue, and if it's you know, more physiological, I mean, just what we call tapping on beginning and end points of meridians. So the meridians, they go from one part of the body to another. They go in specific routes, and they each have a beginning point and an end point. So, you know, one of the things that we do a lot of in kinesiology is to work with those, you know, beginning and end, or B and E points. And working with the B and E points, you can really do a great deal of good. So I'm going to teach how we can recognize certain things. I'm going to show you groups of emotions. I'm going to show you certain indicators. There are things to do with taste. There are things to do with color. There are things to do with season. There are things to do with emotion. And I'm going to show how one can recognize you know, certain signs, and then what you practically do in order to help balance. And what we're doing here, I mean, you know, I'll say this again, always, you know, if there's something going on with your animal, the first person that you speak with is your veterinary surgeon. That is the bottom line. It's the first thing one does. But when we're working with an animal that is, you know, is in a pretty good shape, but you notice that there's something that's kind of not quite right, then, you know, this is for me a great place where we can start our work with the 5 elements, because it enables us to engage with what is happening on a much more subtle level. And the work with tapping, it's like a very gentle massage. Animals are, you know, obviously, unless there's a sort of, you know, specific pain or wound, you know, that are very, very receptive to this. And so it's a very, very nice and very elegant way of bringing oneself into, you know, into relationship with one's animal. You know, and it's a very simple process. So I'm going to demonstrate how this is done, how I approach it, for example, with the horses. But I mean, this can be done. It's so gentle. You know, you can do this with a cat, with a dog, with a, you know, with a guinea, with, you know, a rabbit. You know, and all these animals, you know, they share our, you know, vertebrate body plan. So there's a, you know, there's a great consistency in the way in which we're built, both, you know, in terms of the structure of our bodies, our bones, and in the structure of our energy channels. So, you know, that's where we can really work, you know, very, very simply and very easily. So I'll be doing that. I'll be, you know, I'm going to break down. I'll have a, you know, a table with these clear indications. And for those of you that have signed up for the class, then you'll have this on your screen. And you'll be able to use this as a starting point for your own energy work.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Can you hear me okay out here? I had to get out here and get some sunshine on my pale white Canadian skin.
Right. No, I can hear you fine. Just fine.
Okay. So I think that's really great. just to go more in depth and detail. So for those of you going to join in, and for those of you who are members, you'll get all that great training next week. And then the practical components, what we were talking about a little bit earlier. I have a question actually from Barb, who is one of our VIP members all the way from California. I think, Barb, you're from. So she's asking, good morning, or for you, it's good evening right now.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, Barb.
How do you approach a 15-year kill mustang with PTSD? So what are your thoughts on that, and how can she approach that with your teachings?
So one of the things that I'm going to show is the process of connection. Particularly with a large animal, we're moving into a very powerful energy field when we approach them. And so, developing a sense of space. In horse terms, one wants to become a lead mare. One wants to share one's space and not, and move out of a kind of dominance where a horse is being pushed around or being afraid. So, that will take time. And when you can really get close to the animal, when you can get close to your horse, this is where, oh my God, the process is, it's very, very, very gentle. There's a real heart-to-heart connection. All the horse training that I've been able to do with equestrians, teaches this. Working with my space, working with their space, sharing space, moving out of dominance, moving into lead mare, and then, making that heart connection so that you can both share your energy bubble. And when you're together, you can then really bring in, these elements of emotional freedom therapy. It's incredibly moving, because in my experience, the guard is dropped. In the example that I will show, and there's a little bit of video that I have next week, you'll see this sort of process of approach, of engagement, and then of beginning to sort of, in moving with the horse that I will show, moving in together, so that we're really sharing this energy, which is ours to share. And with PTSD, I think it will be a long process, quite possibly. The tensions, the stresses, the trauma will be contained in likely very specific meridians. So there could be, within the 5 elements, there could be one element which is like way, 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 way out of balance. And this kind of work, you would want to be able to identify that and then start to work with that meridian. But that presupposes that you're really able to get close to your horse, and that there's a real sort of physical proximity, which you can move over that bridge together. But then once you've found that connection, and you are working with the relevant meridian, then I believe that it's just the process of time, and of tapping, and of affirmation, and of just working gently to release, layer by layer, the different levels of trauma. How traumatic the experiences have been for the horse will obviously, make the process more difficult. It will take longer. But the trauma will be linked to specific meridians. It's kind of locked in the energy system. And so our job is to be able to release that in little discharges, little by little, building up confidence, just taking the time. And, and each time, you just go through, keep going. And then, the changes will happen when the horse feels safe, and the boundary, the bubble, the energy bubble is shared. And that there is a true heart-to-heart connection. That's how I would, that's how I would approach your horse. If there were issues, for example, where the horse is, for example, for the practitioner is not physically approachable, then that's where I would use distance Reiki. And I would work with energy balancing. I would tune in to the relevant meridians, and I would work with Reiki at distance until we clear and release many levels of trauma through the distance. And then just build up, through working until we release, until the horse is able to release, is ready to release. And it's a process of acceptance. It's a process of openness. It's a process of unconditional love.
Yeah, that's really good. I think it is. It's something that is gonna obviously take time. And I know that I feel like, Barb, I know you've asked this, I think, before in the past, because I remember you talking about it. But then she made a comment here again, Peter, just saying that yes, he wants me to verse his husband. My husband, and but he still needs to trust the vet and farrier, who are men. I work with him 2 times a day for the past 6 months. He is starting to trust, but yes, he is an onion, many layers. I keep repeating.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good reminder too, because it's just that it's good to remind yourself that, Barb. And I think that that's what I took from what you were saying, is just that it's, and I don't think that Barb is asking for this like a quick fix or something. She's just asking for the guidance, which you definitely provided, but that as a great reminder that it happened over time, and there is that learned behavior and or association with the experience of men, unfortunately, and that's hard to forget, but just trusting that it can be all released.
Yeah, so and the horse learns very quickly what's dangerous. It has, in the wild, they have one chance, and so they learn incredibly rapidly. And the unlearning process, that the danger has gone.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Side, I want to talk to you about motor engrams, but she just mentioned, Barb said she never used Reiki before, or Reiki before. And is that something that you do as well in addition to your kinesiology?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, if she's interested, it would be really good to exchange on that. Distance Reiki I use for horses that are either obviously not where I am in the world, but also, there are times when, for example, one of the horses in the herd has laminitic episodes. At that point, he does not want to be touched.
Right.
The kinesiology is just not a thing for him, and I perfectly understand that. And that's where I'll do distance Reiki. I mean, I'll either go and sit at one corner of the field, or I'll do it from my home 30 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've had many clients in the US, so I'm very happy to be able to work at distance, and see, we could do a short course of distance Reiki with her Mustang, and and work on that.
Well, that's pretty.
I've also done this with kinesiology clients, actually, who, for example, are completely switched off. So you can't test any muscles because nothing is, they're just completely closed down.
Right.
And what I've done there is I've gone away and I've done distance Reiki for, a week. And when I come back, then I can start testing muscles because it's lifted off, different layers. So I mean, I use the two in just when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate.
Yeah, well, I think I was just chuckling there because you were saying that sometimes people will do that. I think that some might listen to you say that and say, wow, that sounds really weird. Like, how does that really work? Like, you can go into the explanation of it, but I just know that it works. I've experienced it myself. I actually took some training myself back in the day when I was deep in my holistic health studies about Reiki or just distance healing. And anybody that doesn't believe in it, I ask them, do you believe in prayer? Do you believe in meditation? Do you believe in energy and the power of intention of thought? And they say, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's basically how this works. That's at least my brief synopsis on it. So Eva Survey is on here from Spain, another presenter, just saying, yes, we are all in it for the same to help the animals who need it. So thanks for reminding us again of that, Eva. And Barb, what I would encourage you to do is reach out to Peter. I put the website up here. Say that again.
I was just going to say two things. Yeah, if anyone does have questions, please do write them in, because that's also, it's great for me to be able to sit with that and then to make specific replies. So if there are any burning questions that are coming through at the moment, please let me know or communicate with you, so that I can answer those, think about them. And the other thing is that since we last spoke, I have rebuilt my own website, which really describes in much more detail.
Yeah.
And so I'm now at peterjeffsholistic.com, which is easy to remember. My name, Peter Jeffs. Okay. Holistic, all one word, .com. And well,
that's I put the other site. I can fix that after, but
yeah,
your old site that I had up there. But I'll put that up.
Great. Okay, and I'm just going to put that in the chat box for you.
Okay, that's great. And
I think that should be, yeah.
Yeah. So Barb was just saying, I just want to just acknowledge this. She said this. I think she's saying this with a smile and kind of chuckling or laughing. In mild sarcasm over there, but just saying, correct, I will be 95 before I get through to him. Unlearning is harder, set in stone. I have used kinesiology since 1975. So I sense that you're kind of joking a little bit there, Barb, because that you recognize the truth in the statement of, that it is more challenging to unlearn, but I certainly wouldn't put that on him or out there that's just, it's going to be till you're 95 until you get through to him. But I was going to ask you, Peter, about your thoughts on the motor engrams and the programming in the nervous system. So my understanding in the human body is that it takes approximately 300 to 500 repetitions, or the movement, a specific movement or firing of a muscle to create what's called a motor engram in the system, which is essentially the firing of impulses through neurons. And as that continues to do so in future occasions, it gets easier and easier and easier. And so I'd explain to my personal training clients that, this is why it's so important to learn how to exercise with proper form and, using your muscles, firing the muscles, engaging the muscles more than the weight that you're lifting, is that because if you learn a faulty recruitment pattern of muscles, or if you are squatting improperly in a way that's you're trying to get it fixed, and whatnot, that it takes about 3,000 to 5,000 repetitions of the proper movement to rewrite that new program over top of the old one. So now, if you can share from your experience, have you saw that correlation? Is that pretty much the same in your work, that it takes 10 times longer to kind of reintegrate new movement patterns or behaviors and whatnot?
Well, I think what I've observed is that change can happen actually more rapidly when we find out where the let's say the behavior or the stimulus is is held, the program is held. Now, I mean, in the case of a training program, yeah, I absolutely agree with you that if you're training in the wrong way, you build up a series of reflexes which are not supporting the body, and it's going to be, you're going to end up with compensations.
Right.
So if you're not you know, doing your weights correctly and your posture is out, then the body will immediately start compensating. I mean, what the kinesiology is going to say is actually to look at which muscles are compensating for which other muscles, and then try and rebalance that. So that's, I mean, that's one part of kinesiology. In the case of you know, something that happens, you know, where there's a response to something, it could be a traumatic response, then the key is to find out where that response is being held in the energy body.
Right.
So, you know, with my first talk for you last year, I mean, when I talked about injury recall, you know, we're talking about, for example, the neck vertebrae here. So in this position, when you take the head, say in a human, and you put the head back, so in a you know, a stressed position,
Yeah.
then that will itself reveal whether or not there are stresses that have been recorded, let's say in this case in the upper body, above the shoulder, and then you can release those. So, for example, in the case of someone who's been through whiplash in a car accident, then there's a somatic memory of that event, and that's recorded here, and that will have all kinds of consequences running through the body. So when you put the person into extension like that, and you allow them to really bend their head right back, you know, that will, you know, you can have someone with, you know, the muscles are all firing normally, that's absolutely fine, and then you can test that with the head in extension and the muscles will all collapse. And so at that point, then, you know, there's a process. I mean, it's literally, it's not exactly a massage, but it's a flexion process that enables to reset that. So the body is no longer, it's like you just reset the circuits.
Right.
And so for an animal or a human who's carrying that stress, you know, that release can be, you know, really powerful. It's like taking literally weight off the shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah, my chiropractor refers to it as it's like getting a subluxation in the joint is like a breaker in an electrical panel that has been tripped.
Yeah.
And that multiple people or multiple subluxations or misalignments within the joints affect the body has to compensate. You know, there has to be compensation. And I think what's just really neat about what you're sharing is that it's first, there's multiple layers. You know, you're talking but the onion, not only in the unraveling of the trauma that has been done to an animal or they've experienced, and then helping them to unwind and heal from that, but then also the way I see it, at least, that there's multiple layers of understanding in the mechanics of how it works, different forms of application, and then the different options that when you kind of get down there with, as you were saying, you know, if you put the neck in this position and you change the occiput on top of the spine, that it's going to change the muscles. So I just think it's neat, and it's empowering to know that there are, that it's out there. It's just, I'm excited to learn from you next week, because I know that your presentation in the summit was phenomenal, and I know that you said you were going to be working on something this whole year, and kind of in this for the 2019 summit, and then you were going to report your findings for this year, which is I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, well, we'll you know, the mini master class, as I said, is the subject is the 5 elements. So we're going to look at that, and I'm going to introduce that, so that can become, you know, part of, I hope will be, you know, something that people will think about. Oh yeah, you know, what are the elements doing at the moment, you know, and how can I, you know, integrate that in the life of, you know, in my own life, because of course it applies to us as well, but also in the life of our animals. And then what I will do in the summer, I'm going to be filming and preparing a talk about the primary reflexes. So this is going to take us right back to the beginning of the, you know, when the animal is born, and these are reflexes that should go away. They should be released after, between 6 months and 2 years. In a human, what I'm interested in looking at is how this is working for horses.
Right.
And again, it's the same system of testing. They're just incredible things. For example, if you note someone, for example, who always stands on the outside of the soles of their feet. So instead of being placed on the ground, they tend to stand with the insole up, the inner sole up, and they're really on the outside of the foot. I mean, that's a primitive reflex. It's a plantar reflex, which is something that has been there since childhood. It should have been released. And these things go on. I mean, in the human, they just go on and they can play havoc with us. So, I've been obviously interested to look at what's happening with our equine friends. And that's, again, that's my own personal sort of research. So that's really what I want to be talking about. What are the primary reflexes? What do they do? How do we recognize them? And then what can we do, again, practically with our own horse?
Yeah,
that's what's coming up in November.
Yeah. So you got
to go live again
for the summit, and then the mini master class next week. And
5 elements.
Yeah, the 5 elements. So
brilliant.
Looking forward to both of them. So I have a comment from Ellen. It says, terrific presentation. Kinesiology works very well for animals. Have you tried using a surrogate when you don't want to test the animal's energy muscles directly? So she's asking that as a question. To you, I think, Peter, and then in response to Barb's comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way that I would work if I was working with Barb's Mustang would be to work with her first. So we would be doing a balancing, what we call a wheel balance. So it's looking at all the major meridians and balancing her, making sure that all her muscles are switching on and off and that everything's flowing and fluid. And then what we do is to ask her to connect with her Mustang, and then exactly as Ellen is saying, so we then look at the different circuits and we use her muscles to see what is happening for her horse, and that is exactly how we would proceed. And when I'm with the herd that I work with, I use self-testing because I'm just sort of moving in around with the animals, and we're all together, and that's a sort of very much a flow situation. Yeah, absolutely. Working with an individual animal, I would work with their human companion, and the process is basically a thorough kinesiology session for the human companion, and then we go out and work with their horse.
Yeah, so that's good. Barb, you now are going to be put on the spot. But kidding, but also not kidding, because I know that multiple presenters, I've heard this as a common thread, that they say through the summit, through their live trainings and in their teachings, that a lot of their work, a good portion of it, I should say, is not just caring for or advising or suggesting and recommending to the animal, or the owner, the pet parent, or whatever, the caretaker of the animal, on behalf of the animal, but also that they're coaching and mentoring and guiding and leading and educating the pet parent or the horse owner or the caretaker, because there's that impact and that contribution of that the dynamic of the relationship there, right? And I think that's what you were referring to, is just saying, okay, well, first let's kind of get a bearing on and understanding of where, as an example, we'll use Barb, where Barb is in this situation, and then the next step would be then to move on to the Mustang, to seeing what contributions are going back and forth between the Mustang and Barb, as an example, right?
Mm.
Does that kind of jive with your philosophy and your teachings?
Absolutely. I use self-testing because I'm also, while I'm not there, I'm part of the herd.
Right.
work with them every week. So I have that honorary status of being a herd member, a human herd member. And so I do, my self-testing when I'm working with someone who, with a horse with whom I'm not in a herd relationship, then I work with them, because the herd of two is that person and their horse. So that's the energy bond. It's already established. And what's beautiful about the kinesiology, what I love, is that you've got the horse, you've got their companion, human companion, and then the kinesiologist. So the person is completely integrated in the healing process. They're speaking, their body is speaking for their horse, which is beautiful. It's there's such kind of huge bond in that. And I think I see the kinesiologist in this case as being a complete facilitator. It's not in the same position as a vet who has that distance from the situation. It's different because we're working with with the companion's energy as well. So we're, it's in that sense. I mean, that's for me what the holistic side of this is. And that's why it's a sort of different approach. Yeah, I'm not making any value judgments here. I'm totally not, because what I do is with the full respect and of a veterinary surgeon. But what I'm saying is that the vet works directly with the horse in his intervention, and I work with the horse and their companion and myself, and we form a kind of triangle. And so that's, that's just something that really speaks to me with all my sort of holistic leanings. And thank you. That's my website. That's the new website that's come up. And you will find, if you go into the equine section there, you will find that there are forms. You can join my mailing list. I have an ebook which I wrote about the healing process. It's called The Holistic Path. And that's offered when you join my mailing. And you can, on the pages of the equine site, you will find there are forms where you can message me, leave me a note. And so if any of you do have questions and you want to ask me specific things, either for the next mini master or for, just at any time, I mean, I'll be very, very happy. The messages come through to my professional mailbox and I'll be able to reply to you. So please use that facility. I spent a long time building these forms so that people can actually get in touch with me on specific subjects. So I really do hope that you'll use them, and I hope that you'll enjoy the new website, because it's really integrated between kinesiology and Reiki and EFT and my work with horses. And so and there's a lot of explanation about, what these, what is kinesiology as well. So that kind of, Okay, I've lost you there, Barney.
Doesn't help when
Hello?
you mute yourself. Yeah, I muted myself. The bird was
Right.
chirping too loud, so I had to mute them.
All right. Okay, those birds.
It's beautiful.
They're singing.
Yeah,
they're singing.
This is my, I'll just show you real quick. We built our new house and we have a nice big mature tree growth out here. And I had to come out of the back porch patio because I needed to get into my office. And it's just absolutely beautiful out here. We got our property balanced. We had this guy that does geomantics, basically like acupressure for the earth. And it's really cool. And a lot more wildlife is coming around. It's pretty spectacular. So we're a little total side tangent here, but I got distracted with the birds. But thank you for sharing that with your new website. It looks great. And I see that the other website will still give, it's still up there on the other
website is still up there. I'm in the process of closing that down, but for the moment, I mean, this is where I'm going to be for a good time to come.
Yeah, that's great.
They can contact you. Sorry?
They can then, so Barb can reach out to you, or whoever else?
There's a contact page, and there are forms to get in touch. Leave me a message. I really invite you to share. Tell me what's going on, and let's have a discussion about it. I'll be very, very happy. So, please, the site is more, it's more open to two-way communication now with all the kind of, the infrastructure that I've put in place. So I really encourage, our community to get in touch, use that, reach out. And I've also got I've got a blog space there now on the site. So, someone comes in with a question. It's very possible that I'll sit down and I'll write a blog post about it to give them some, not only them some, firsthand feedback, but also, to bring that into the discussion. Because, when someone poses a question, it's there for everybody.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. And that's the other part. We had Eva on here earlier. I don't know if she's still on, but as all the presenters, and this is just to restate the reason why we exist is the Animal Wellness Summit. I'm not an animal wellness expert per se, but I have a lot of experience and interest in holistic health, which a lot of my understanding in the human body relates to the animals, but I didn't realize exactly how much. And so I just am grateful for you to be able to contribute to us and the community at Animal Wellness Summit, to contribute for everybody, because I know that it's awesome to share. And that's what's cool, because we don't just focus on one modality or one methodology or one presenter's opinion or perspective. I have had a couple that, disagree with each other. And I'm like, great, it's good, because I like hearing both sides, and people can say, should I feed raw or not feed raw, or should I do this or should I do that?
Yeah,
and we all get to learn and then ask the questions. And I think that that's really what I've taken from our time together today here, is to not be afraid, as silly as it might sound, to ask the simple questions that can lead to a better understanding and an awareness to make better choices and see better changes and results with our relationships and our animals. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. Any last final words of wisdom before we part ways today?
Well, I hope that you will all come back next week for the this time for the mini master class. And one of the things that I love, is just doing this, preparing this. Things have come up. We look at something, and then the universe just throws us the right ball to get us, to think about these things. And this was something, that came up the other day. I'll talk about this next week.
Yeah.
But just looking at an issue. We've been looking at it different ways with a different horse, actually, not the one that I'm going to talk about, but a different horse. And something really came up when I was thinking. Again, I was just saying, okay, well, look, let's do our 5 elements. Walk the talk, and let's think about that. And really, really interesting. And it just goes to show, how connected we are. We're in this field,
yeah,
and things are coming to us all the time. So I feel very attentive to that, and so there's another little example of things that I can talk about. I got a few things to
share.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome.
So it's a great pleasure to be here. Lovely to be able to talk with you and to share, and lovely to see many people here on this call, which is great. Thank you very much for your attention and for staying with us to listen to our conversation.
Yeah, because this is great. And the final thing I'll say, just like a kind of like a housekeeping thing, I guess, is that you can tag people in the Facebook video if you're watching this after as a replay. You can share it because it's right on our page. Also, you can find all of these recordings on our YouTube channel and also in our members area. The only place that they don't exist is in our Success Summit app, which is an easy way for all of our members to watch, read, and listen to all the presentations from the summits that at their fingertips, anywhere they are, any time of the day, or no matter where they are in the world. But it's neat because you have the membership site, Facebook, and YouTube. So just share it. You know, the neat part is that, you know, we do these calls for free for you guys, with the intention to serve you. And the best compliment that you could ever do for us is to go and support the presenters, support people like Eva, Peter, Sarah Jane Farrell from South Africa, and also consider joining our paid membership, which allows us to continue to keep doing this event for free, but also gives you a higher level of access as well. And so if you're interested in that, you can just go to the link down below. I'll put it in the comments, but it's just go.animalwellnesssummit.com/buy now. Or if you just type in go.animalwellnesssummit.com, it'll take you to the main page. You can get yourself signed up for 2019 if you're not already signed up for the Animal Wellness Summit in November 7th to the 16th. And then as well, you can join in with us next week with Peter to dig deep. It's a Zoom call, so it's something that doesn't get sent out publicly. It only gets sent out to those of you who purchase, or if you're a paying member. So thanks again, Peter. Appreciate it, and have a great day. Yep, and we'll see you next week, okay?
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Barney. Take care. Good wishes to you all. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.